back again. I think I mentioned in my last few videos that I'm working on making a book. So I've got my book covers made, and then my handmade paper that I'm going to use for my pages, which we saw featured in my dry box video. And so for this part of the process, I'm going to need several tools. And that includes my scoring board, my paper cutter, a sheet of cardstock, and some adhesive. Okay, so I'm going to start with my scoring board and my paper that I made. So this paper, I'm using all recycled paper for it, so it's a little fragile now that it's done and dried. It tears really easily, and I'm going to use half a sheet for my book. I've already torn a couple in half just to make sure they fit in my covers, and it looks like they fit just about right. It's going to have kind of an uneven edge, which I really like that look, especially with the style of the book I'm going to do. So the way I'm going to get a nice even tear on these is I'm going to use my scoring board, and these sheets are approximately 8.5 by 11 inches. So I'm just gonna score right down the 5.5 inch line. And I can hear the paper crackling as I do this. And I haven't torn one with the floral inclusions in it yet, so we're gonna see how that works out, because there's kind of a bump right there. I might have to trim it. I've got my scissors just in case. But what I'm gonna do is just fold it in half one way, fold it in half the other way, and I'm starting to feel like the fibers break under my fingers even. And then I'm gonna try just pulling it apart, and it's tearing real nice and easy here. I mean, still be careful. You don't wanna ruin your handmade sheets, but it should come apart pretty easily. It's sticking a little bit at those flowers, but just being careful. Now we've got our two sheets, and I think I'm gonna trim some of this flower fiber here. Yeah, great. Now I've got two sheets that are approximately half the size of an 8.5 by 11, which is 8.5 by 5.5. We'll do one more, just for an example. Score, pressing down nice and hard, but going slow so you don't go off track. Fold, fold. And I'm not using my bone folder to do this folding just because I don't want it to leave any like drag lines on my paper, which I feel like it might because it's kind of thick. Okay, and that one must have been a little bit bigger than 11 because I've got a bit of a lip there, but I think that's fine. I don't mind my pages looking uneven. Okay, and so we'll just knock the rest of these out real quick. There we go. So now I've got all of my pages ready to go into my book. Oh, that's gonna look so cool. I love it. Okay, so next, I'll show you what I'm gonna do to support my paper. Okay, so like I mentioned, this paper is really fragile, kind of brittle. And what I'm gonna do to bind the book together is punch some holes in it, and then just, you'll be able to flip through them kind of like a binder, but I don't want the cord that I'm using to bind to wear through the pages so they eventually rip out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut some little slivers of this just cardstock, which I think will hold up better, and then adhere it to the back of my pages. And you might ask, well, which side is the front, which side is the back? The front is whichever side ends up looking cooler after you've made your paper. So I think I'm going to just cut a bunch of little 1/2 inch strips out of this paper. And I picked kind of just a marbly one I had in my collection. I thought that would look cool with my book. And actually, it's a little hard to measure just a 1/2 inch over on this side. So what I'm gonna do is measure it from this side. So we've got our 11-inch paper, and I'll just move it over a 1/2 inch at a time. in my little strips. And there we have all the strips, and then those will just be adhered to the back of these pages just along. I'm going to use the torn edge on the inside, and I'll put that strip there just as a reinforcement. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and use my neutral pH adhesive for this, just because I want this to be able to last a long time. I was thinking about using my tape roller, but I feel like the tape would just pull off of the paper. Thought about using a glue stick, but I feel like that might dry up and separate after a while. So I think this will work well. Okay, so what I have here is just a little bit of my adhesive poured onto a paper plate I pulled out of my trash can, a wet paper towel, my glue strips, and my paper. I didn't do the whole cup of glue this time because I want to just use a little bit. I think this paintbrush will work well. It's a little soft for this, but I don't really want to put a ton of glue on these either, so I think that's fine. So I'll take my first sheet and a nice one of my little strips. I'm going to try and contain my gluing over to this side. Let's see if this works. I'm being pretty light with the glue here. Oops. She says as she gets a giant glob on the brush. Okay, let me put just a tad bit more on the end. Okay, and then I'll take that. I like this as the front because it's got this purple splotch on it. Oops. And then if I can grab both ends, I'll just line that up along the edge of my paper, and that's what I'm going to punch through to make my holes for my binding. I'll smooth it down and set it to the side. I'll do another. Oh, I got a cat hair in that one. That's going to be the back. I feel like I can't make paper without getting at least one cat hair in it. Sorry, everybody who gets handmade paper gifts from me. Oops, like I said, I'm going to keep my gluing over here. I'm sure it's not too easy to see what I'm doing here, but I'll get our cat hair side on the back, take our strip, and make sure we put it on the folded edge. Okay, and smooth it down. And I may weight these down once I have them all done, just to be safe, make sure they dry nice and flat. Okay, so that's the idea of that. I'm not going to make you sit through all 20 pages of this, but we'll be back for the next step. Okay, so there is my last strip glued down. I am going to clean up my mess. Then I'm going to put some weight on these just to make sure they dry flat. Okay, and then we'll move on to the next part, which involves our book covers.